I'm an administrator. I'm used to just, do my own work and so on. Now all of a sudden, my job is creating tickets, explaining details of what needs to be done, and then confirming, verifying that SAP RISE, in this case, is actually doing what I'm expecting them to do. And it feels a bit frustrating because I'm not an engineer anymore.
Welcome to the Tekitok podcast, where we embark on a journey through the ever-evolving realm of SAP and IT operations, automation, artificial intelligence, and cloud technologies. Whether you're an IT professional, a business leader, or simply curious about emerging technologies and industry insights, our episodes will be your compass in navigating this dynamic landscape with real-world experiences. Join us as we demystify complex concepts, explore innovative trends, and engage in stimulating dialogue with industry experts to empower you with insights that matter. The views expressed by our hosts and guests are their own and do not reflect the opinions of their respective companies. The producer of this Tekitok podcast assumes no responsibility for any public content, ideas, or recommendations shared.
Welcome to another episode of our Tekitok conversation. We've been talking about SAP RISE for a few episodes, what it is, services provided, how to transition to SAP RISE. And I think it's a really great opportunity and time for service and operations conversation and what are the experiences, what we notice, what we know. So with that, I think Lynn, Andrew, Michael, welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Morning.
Maybe we can get started with how should IT teams face the fact that they are moving to another organization, some of their operations, because part of that is moving to another organization. They need to manage that service. Something stays within the team, and there is the SLA with SAP RISE versus the OLA or the operational level agreements that is internal within the organization, and some of those challenges. Lynn, can you
I will spend a couple of minutes just explain the framework that when we think about operations, we're going into more service management now. So you've already deployed and you're live. How do you make sure the service is delivering the uptime and availability, performance, and all of the expected services that your business need to run its businesses, right? Your core process. So when we think about operation in IT terms, right? IT terms. We think about like these monitoring functions you need to monitor for your technical side, as well as maybe the business process. Everything is working as expected. You have the management after you understand what's there, what's ticking. You have always this management thing to do, like change management, release management, user security, all your processes for upgrades, anything that have to do with making change through your lifecycle management parts of running SAP, right? So after you deliver, you have lifecycle. What is involved in that? And then how much automation you need to do, because IT teams are always considered to be a cost center. So business try to be more efficient, driving down costs of running with less people, be more efficient. And then we look into people process tools. This typically how it happens, right? Who does what? What do they use? Is there like well-documented processes, or are there tool platforms to help them to automate? And across all these areas. So this is kind of the challenge. I'm not going to go into any level in detail, but in the framework of providing an operational framework, how you measure your operations, how you measure your service level with the service provider like SAP. So that's one area. The other one I want to talk within the framework of RISE is, we've seen this before in past episodes, but in the context of those areas of monitor, manage, automate, there's areas that SAP breakdown in continuous operations, business improvement, data management, deployment management, functional application changes like transports, advanced monitoring. So maybe you're talking about business process level monitoring. operational improvement, like for instance, identifying gaps in your service so that you can improve the platform delivery, and then performance testing, release management. All these areas are SAP's kind of outlined in their core document around the roles and responsibility. And as you can see, these are pretty much example for working with SAP and customers' responsibility. So given this is the kind of like rough outline, we'll talk about that in the next 20 minutes in detail about actual day in the life of an IT or customer team working in RISE framework together with SAP, as well as the internal stuff, and identify some of the learned experiences we can share.
Knowing that there is a service and there's a service list that SAP RISE provides, I think a key is to have an SLA with them and how a organization is going to monitor day by day, week by week, month by month, or whatever that cadence is, that the service is being delivered, the quality of the service. And I think maybe we can start with that. Andrew, Michael, Andrew, I think you probably have a lot of experience managing the service with SAP RISE.
Yeah, I think if you think starting out with RISE, I think there's a change in how everyone needs to work now. You're sort of taking on board a new partner. You have to work, figure out how best to work together, what the strengths and weaknesses of your partner is, and how to involve them. So it's like for us, we have a weekly meeting that we meet up with the RISE team and go through any particular vulnerabilities. Let's talk about vulnerabilities and availability, right? So you want their role is to make sure that the system is available, and then we're able to focus more on, let's say, the higher value activities to innovate and develop the system. So I think some of the strong points that we have from the team is if there's any critical vulnerabilities that are like security vulnerabilities, it's something that they will automatically take care of. So that alleviates us to even to worry about it. So we'll get notified to say, hey, there's log4j, for example, coming out. This is critical. Production systems already have to be scheduled to be patched, and they're doing it already, right? So it's in progress. There's no downtime for that, for example. That is a real benefit. When it starts coming down to things like OS patches that are slightly maybe high and medium, then we would need to schedule it, go out and put a date, put it through our separate landscape environments, dev, QA, production, and then plan it and take over that sort of activity. How we typically work with SAP is used through service requests for maintaining new work, or like patching, but then of course if there's any issues within the system, then you're obviously raising incidents like OSS tickets. So I think learning how to work, because that's a really big change in terms of any organization would need to go through, especially if you're a matured organization. If you're more of a new to SAP, then these services are there that can be done to augment or supplement any resources that you may not have on the basis or infrastructure team. But I think for a large organization that already has a specific basis team and it's coming from a brownfield, I think there's so many other complexities within a brownfield implementation that I'm not sure that RISE could cover all that, because as you see in that service list, there's so many things that the customer needs to actually be responsible for anyway. So I don't see a reduction in that. I just see a change in the activities that might need to be done.
Andrew, so that brings something, as you were explaining, is your team had to go from, let's say, a systems engineer, SAP basis, from doing to requesting somebody else to do and manage that delivery. and the quality of it. So it seems like totally different job. I'm an administrator. I'm used to just, do my own work and so on. Now all of a sudden, my job is creating tickets, explaining details of what needs to be done, and then confirming, verifying that SAP RISE, in this case, is actually doing what I'm expecting them to do. And it feels a bit frustrating because I'm not an engineer anymore. What's that morale in the team?
Yeah, I think there's a nuance to that. So there's a wide range of activities that can be done, obviously within the overall maintenance of any SAP system, right? So I think the focus, I guess the idea is if you're able to whatever level of service that you subscribe in terms of what SAP is going to do for you, you assume that, let's say you give that portion to them, and that allows your team to focus on, let's say, new initiatives or higher value type of work, so that you can. There's still a lot of things that needs to be done in the system that are not being covered within RISE, for example. So if you didn't take the full suite, you have to still do all those activities as you had on that list before. Data management, that's something that no matter what is set up, you're still responsible for. Archiving or data cleanup. That's something that SAP is not going to do anyway, right? So yes, there's certain key activities that maybe someone who had previously done before was more hands-on to do, and now it's more of a management administration of it, scheduling it and planning it. But there's also a lot of activities that someone who has a team already may not select all those add-ons specifically. And remember, SAPs, they're not managing any of your interfaces. They're not managing the monitoring of all that. That's all customer specific. And if you think about it, it's quite difficult for SAP to know that. So you can't really expect that that's going away.
So maybe for some people, for some administrators, they may think, oh God, thank you. I don't have to do this tedious work anymore. Somebody else is going to do it. So I can focus on, those innovation projects that I need to do. And before I didn't have time because I was just busy on patching things. And now I don't have to do all that tedious work.
Yeah, I think if you look at it that way and you treat it as a way to expand and do other higher value activities, then yeah, you have to bring them in as your partner to be able to do that. I think sharing what's happening, what's in the roadmap. Let's say you want to build an N+1 environment. Obviously that requires their assistance, and then of course there's activities that you need to do to build up the system too. But the preparation, like how to be able to do that, how long it's going to take. It's not just your team anymore. SAP is part of your team now. You need to factor in their time. So that whole planning of how the complexity of doing something like that, you need to give yourself enough lead time. You need to prepare that. So that's something I guess you would need to focus on, but you don't need to focus on, let's say, patching it, reset, those type of things. Those things are taken care of. But then your next project is setting up, let's say, an N+1. Then you need to prepare, and you need to bring them in and know how to work with them.
And what's your experience with? I mean, there's always going to be projects, and you need, as you said, you need to involve them in the N+1 because you're building a new system or so on. Do they provide a sort of project manager that can understand what your next 6 months is going to be, so they can help you in achieving those projects? Or they're just, hey, no, everything has to be through ticket, send me a ticket, but you're working in a project mode, which is not a traditional, service request and all service requests. How is that SAP partnering with you, understanding, hey, you want to achieve this project the next 6 months, let's work together, or not?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it really, based on experience, I think you really need to know when to sort of put your foot down and say, I need this as a project, and when you can sort of let certain things go and say, okay, we'll follow the ticketing process, and we know it's slower, it's more an operational. So I think that is in discussion with the team, and then highlighting that this particular initiative requires a different mechanism, where it's more like a project team involvement. I think that's when you're starting to then say, okay, for this particular project, we're bringing your people as a project, so it's more of a paid service. Like you're getting resources now, right? You're going through that traditional resource model, so you have to bring them in as that. But typically, that's not usually their standard operation. Really is to have an inventory of that menu list, of managing it through their ticketing system, to be able to complete things. So I think that's the low cost way. But obviously, we all know when you run projects, it's time sensitive. Cost may not be the number one driver. So then you have to bring them into the sort of the project way of doing things. So then you're not going to, they say, benefit from low cost, because you actually need quick response times. You need a different mechanism of working. So I think you have to understand that, and then you have to work with them to adapt that this particular one, we have to work in a different model, because their model that I think they're trying to get everyone in is more of the lower cost type of ticketing model, and that doesn't always work for projects. That's true.
Right. So does that mean you find yourself rewriting the way you manage projects, essentially, right? So we always been in IT operations, we have either a Scrum Master if you're in Agile, or you have a traditional waterfall project manager. Sounds like in RISE, in operation side, after you go live, I mean, no customer actually just go live and then just stand still, right? There's always the continuous innovation, release management, lifecycle management, and then there's the operation that keeps things humming the way it is. So there's always combination of those. And so looks like the project management, if I were to look at our people, process, and tools and things like that, seems like the process always needs to be kind of almost, you need to write a handbook with the process, the new process. Let's just call it the new process working in an SAP customer in a RISE environment, because it's different. It's not like you can ignore the differences and say, yeah, I've just treated like, on my project plan, I put SAP there, but no, you cannot. You have to put what kind of ticket are you going to open for that task, and how are you going to follow up, because you're not going to get them. I think you're not going to get them in a status daily stand-up meeting to say this task is this, right?
Yeah, it's got I think it's a different way of working, that's for sure. You're going to have to, I guess, experience it, and as in any, project. Once you go live, you have the stabilization, and then you have then you sort of figure out how best to work together. I think the focus, if we look at from a RISE perspective, is I think is availability. Like the system is got to be up. That part you get some. I think that's the peace of mind that we're trying to say we're giving to RISE. RISE will make sure that the system is up, and it's operating, and it's available, and then you can focus on everything else, right? So I guess if you look at it to say, well, we can only be focusing on project work because we know the system is up. Right.
Yeah.
So if we know the system is up and system's available, I don't have to worry about it. If we know that it's secure, and they'll tell us when there's something like that we need to be worried about, we can continue to focus on the future initiative. So I think if we look at it that way, you say, okay, that's what they're going to do. We need them to help with this sort of initiative. Then we sort of bring them into our working method. If it happens to be a project, then you're sort of paying for services, for example, but yes, typically it's going to be a waterfall type method, where you need to make sure that you understand their sort of stage gates to get things done when you're trying to bring on new servers. Because I mean, that's what RISE is going to be doing mostly, right? Most of the other stuff is going to be your responsibility internally or with your external service provider, right? Because they're just, if you want to spin up another N+1, yes, that's where RISE is involved. if there's specific initiatives that you need them to do and create, then it's going to be sort of project based, right?
Yeah. And Andrew, how long have you been with SAP RISE as a service provider live?
Yeah, so live for about 16 months, and then
16 months. Okay.
yeah, and then
so in the 16 months, so when I see in transition to a service provider, there is the stabilization phase where, just get things up running and working, and not many tickets every day, and all that stuff. Then there is optimization, and then the innovation. Where do you think you are? If we see in those three phases, are you in stabilization phase after 16 months, or you pass that and the system is stable, you're optimizing, or you are innovating now?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think when we talk about an implementation for SAP, we were a greenfields implementation. When you talk about the stabilization, I think there's two portions that we can talk about. One, we're talking about stable business operation, which is more from SAP speak, more functional, right? And then we talk about stabilization as in the system, the availability. So for us, I would say in the first 4 to 6 months, we were in a sort of infrastructure stabilization. But now, after sort of 16 months, we're definitely way past stabilization from a business operation. So definitely new enhancements, new initiatives are where we are at right now. I would say the availability of SAP during stabilization was very good. We had minimal downtimes. We do have to schedule our own planned downtimes for patching and things like that. But critical items were done automatically by SAP. We did have some teething issues early on in stabilization, working through with SAP, where you have to be very precise on certain things that you want to do in when you're raising service requests. So I'll give you an example. As a quick one is when you want to reboot a server, that's something that's it's a free service, but it's a ticket. You raise a ticket, reboot this server, apply some parameters, for example. Now, the ticketing system is supposed to be explicit, right? Explicitly giving you which system and what you want them to do. So we had a mistaken reboot of a production server, caused a little bit of concern, but that was a teething in the very early, and I think that those are things that we haven't seen that since. But we're also more careful when we're putting in a reboot of non-production systems. We'll also type in and make sure that we're there. We'll send just to make sure everyone is clear. But we also had cases where we had issues with some what we thought were availability issues, but actually SAP was up. It was more our sort of internal network security issues. But then we had the RISE team did come on, and they were available. They did sort of join our emergency crisis meetings to participate. So we did feel that we were supported by them. And even during that happened about 3-4 times. And actually it was each time SAP itself was actually up and running, and there wasn't any issue there. So from a experience for the last 16 months in terms of availability, I would say it has been very good. It
That's
does
awesome.
take some work to figure out how to work through their system, which also takes time.
It's part of the stabilization. So this is a good segue for maybe our next episode on initiatives from optimization to innovation. What projects, how can we collaborate? At the end of the day, you and any organization transitioning to SAP RISE, they want to optimize, and then they want to innovate and incorporate those innovations that SAP is delivering. So maybe it's a good segue for that type of conversation. After we looked at stabilization and service systems are up and running, you can focus on projects. things like that. By the way, I love the scene that we got today. It's pretty awesome. I would like to get a bit of the water up here. This is awesome. So any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I think also would be important is maybe just get more feedback maybe from Andrew's experience as far as the organization as a whole, as far as their satisfaction with RISE, and is it moving in the right direction where they expected it to be, and was it harder than they thought, right? So then maybe that's some things that we could probably talk about moving forward. I think a lot of our customers want to hear about that before they take the big plunge.
I think we'll have to invite Andrew back for some other learn experiences. But yeah, I think for today, operationally, I would like to thank Andrew, have most experience on RISE, and I appreciate all your inputs. And I think it's been a healthy discussion, help customers kind of plan for what to expect. And we expect people to have a dialogue and conversation. So the episode isn't just to like a static thing, right? So hopefully you guys will follow and we'll have more discussion around on this topic. So with that today, I think, Jordi, is it a wrap?
Well, that's probably it, right? So we are gonna get together for another episode of Tekitok, and we'll continue with the SAP RISE series.
Okay, thank you very much,
everyone.
I'll grow.
Thank you, everyone.
Just RISE. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. Till next time.